Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, October 18th. I'm acting like this is the podcast. But we're here to talk about how to outline your novel, part 2. So I hope that you've had a wonderful week so far. Hump day is always hard. I'm a little low energy tonight, gotta admit. But I am excited about the story and about diving deeper into the story. So I hope that y'all are having a good time building your story out. And let me know in the comments if you are live. How is it going? Are you having any brainstorms? Did you have any revelations since the last time we talked about your story? I was up late, as I wrote in the email, if you guys are on the reminder email list, that, yeah, I was up late the other night dictating notes into my phone about the story world and the world building, the background. I got some good information there. I don't know. I'm still in the point where a lot of decisions need to be made. We're over halfway through Preptober and things are getting solidified. And I know that all the work that we do in planning helps to make it real in our minds and like have the story living in our minds. Hello, Etori, welcome. Let me know how your story is going. Have you had any revelations, any brainstorms? Are you feeling good about it? Are you worried about anything? I am excited to know. We talked about in the last video creating characters and character names, and I already changed the name that I gave my character in the last video. So that happens. I don't know exactly why I changed it. I was feeling something else was going on. Hi, Deb. Hi, Laura. Welcome. No revelations yet for Laura. That's okay. They come when they need to come. Deb is a little behind. That's cool. I feel like I'm behind too, but we're getting there. Showing up is half the battle, right? Hopefully I'm not shaking everything. All right. So thinking about how to move forward in the outline. Doing the character work definitely helps, in my opinion. Hello, Read, Love, Listen. Etor, you're soggy? Does that mean it's raining where you are? Yeah, doing the work helps, and I think that sometimes it's like when you actually get into the writing, you will have your brainstorms and have your revelations. But laying the groundwork, it's like building the foundation, and then maybe like when you walk away from it, little sprites in your mind go behind your back and like build things, and then you come back and you're like, oh wow, there's something there. There's a structure here. And if you didn't do that work with the foundation, then there would have been nothing to build on. I don't know if that's a good metaphor or not, but that's how I was thinking about it. Oh, okay. Etar, you're working on the soggy middle. I I haven't heard it called that before. I like that. Yeah, it's like you get the firm beginning, firm end, and the middle gets soggy. The middle is tough. And there's no doubt about that. There's no way around it, just to go through it. All right, let's see where we are. I have to get organized. So tonight, going back to the story planner spreadsheet that we've been in, I went ahead and I filled out, let me actually share my screen on that. I filled out try this. The character profile. I changed Nora's name to Aster. So my heroine's name is Aster now. And Aster means star or flower. And for some reason, oh, I know what happened. I was thinking about the title of this book, and I had an idea for some titles, and I needed a different musicality to her name because I want to put her name in the title. So Nora was fine. It's still the same number of syllables. I was going to call her Daisy because I wanted something super bright. She might still be a daisy. I'm going back and forth, but I wrote down Aster, and I like the meaning of star or flower for that. Even though Daisy is an actual flower, I think Aster is an actual flower too. But it's got double meanings that were meaningful to me when I made this decision. But it is still, everything's on the table at this point. So yes, continuing with the character work helps to get us to the next part of the outline. So in this spreadsheet, if I go back to what we were doing in part 1 of how to outline your novel, I was working on the 7-point plot structure, and I got 7 points here. I did not finish the romance arc, which often I don't. Like, I figure the romance sort of comes together on its own. Everyone's gonna be different, and if you're not writing a romance, obviously. But, I probably should focus on it a little bit more, but I think that's gonna come later, and I'm not feeling the energy of that right now. So I would like to do to what I would like to do is put this into Save the Cat and sort of see how that works out. And I also want to start brainstorming scenes. So I'm going to use, there should be a link in the description to the whimsical version of the Save the Cat template. And I'm going to go ahead. Whimsical is a free tool that, and I will put the link on here. It is a free tool that you can use to brainstorm. Like, it's got whiteboarding, it's got mock-ups, it's got a lot of things in it. I don't have the link over, so let me just type it in. allpen.co/whimsical. There it goes. And I need to, on this account, create an account. I have to make a password. Don't steal my password. And sign up. Or actually, I could just sign up with Google. It's probably better. All right, I'm just going to call it Workspace. I don't want to invite anybody to it. All right, we can skip all of this stuff and hopefully get back to the template. All right, so we have the template here. I'm going to zoom in on it. Zoom, zoom, zoom. And this gives us all of the Save the Cat steps that are also present in the spreadsheet. And yes, I see that if you're text challenged, hopefully I'll walk you through it and it'll make sense. So there is, if you're familiar with Save the Cat, there are these 11 steps. Actually, are there more than 11? I thought there were 11. Maybe there's more. And I made this sort of template to correspond to that, but you can put in individual little index cards into it. So opening image setup, and we'll go through that. It's gonna be a little hard because the screen is so tiny, but we'll make it work. So how it works is, all right, this is view only. I actually have to make my own from this template. So what you have to do is new from this template, put it in your files, and now it's my Nano 2023 Save the Cat. So now I can actually edit it and zoom back in. So we'll start at the beginning. I have some sample cards in there. And how it works is in Whimsical, you can add cards on the left. So there's different types of elements. There are sticky notes, these are stacks, these white boards, and they're like containers for cards, and you can color code the cards. So let's say I have an opening image, which is the first step, and I have an idea for the scene. And I like to color code based on my characters. So let's say Aster is going to have a pink color, and I just do traditional pink and blue for boys and girls, but of course do whatever you like. And maybe we know that she's working in an inn. Just my shorthand for this scene. That's going to be a version of the scene in the setup section. So you can have like the index card method where you might brainstorm ideas for your scenes on index cards. This is just a version to do it digitally. Sometimes I still do physical index cards. It's just for me a space issue where, I was spreading them out all over my desk or on the floor or on the dining room table, and sometimes that's not possible. So doing it digitally is another valid way. And when I come up with a scene idea, and even if I don't know where it's going to be, so let's say I have some ideas for scenes, I don't know exactly which section of the story they're going to go into. So I'll just put them outside. I usually go up here, and then you can use the shortcuts, or you can just click and let's take another scene, just drag it over. Let's say I want to have a scene where Aster is sneaking around the house, the mansion, we'll call it. All right, so I don't know exactly where that goes, but that's the scene that I think should be in this book somewhere. And then maybe I'll have a scene from a hero's perspective, Duncan's perspective, where Duncan is hiding in the library. So I like to just brainstorm somewhere and then as I go and as I figure out and I'm putting together the story, then I'll drag that into where it needs to be. So maybe we when we meet Duncan, he's hiding in the library. So that's part of the setup. And I can, either delete this placeholder or something. There is another placeholder for the theme stated, which is another part of the save the cat method. So this is a way to sort of deepen and expand your outline into actual scenes that you're going to be writing, which is the goal of the outlining phase. So coming back to like before we get here, if you're not sure what the scenes are exactly, I like to go from a top-down view, so a wider to narrower view of the situation. And that is what this overview of the Save the Cat steps are in the spreadsheet that we are working on. So let's see, we can go through this, make this a little taller. And I can kind of go back and forth between the work I already did on this side of the things, on the 7-point plot structure. And some of them are going to correspond. Save the Cat has more steps. So we're going to have to naturally expand when we go. That's why I like to start with fewer steps. And then as I know more about the story, go to more steps. And there are other plotting systems. Obviously, there's plenty of plotting systems. So if neither of these work for you, then you can create your own tab in the spreadsheet with, there's a W plot, there's all kinds of systems. I don't even know, snowflake method. There's lots of things. These are just the two that I end up going to often. So if we're going to start with the setup, the setup is actually before, it's the before picture. This is what I put here. If I'm going to save the cat, I think I do want to start showing my heroine at her old job and maybe showing why this job sucks. So Aster working at an inn, being harassed by either a patron or boss. And then one of these warriors spots this. Warriors like over here, this issue is happening, whatever. So that's how they are introduced to her and they recognize her as then we might, I don't know if I gave names to the other characters, but I'm assuming that my hero is not a part of this. And then the other part of this is that I forgot Sheets works a little differently. So then we'll have another scene where Duncan is hiding in the library from his boss, maybe, or from someone. The idea was that these warriors, there's someone over them. So there is some kind of boss for the warriors. And I was going to call them, a prior. The boss of the warriors is called the prior. So he's hiding in the library from the prior because he doesn't want to deal with whatever's happening. And make sure that my spreadsheet is wrapping so you can see everything. Cool. So that is how I would start with expanding the ideas from the first version of this. And it's going to change. For me, this changes each time I do it. So it's like the same, but different. Like I learn more about it by doing the 7-step process. And then I come back to my Save the Cat tab and do this process. Any questions about what I've been talking about? Is anyone completely lost or confused? I was going to say, Roseanne likes the spreadsheet thing. I'm a big fan of spreadsheets. I couldn't plot without spreadsheets. I hope you all may not be as enamored of spreadsheets as I am, but they are very useful and helpful. And Alice in Wonderland retelling sounds really fun. Hey JK, how are you doing? Welcome. And yeah, at any point, let me know where you are in the story, if you're coming upon any problems or issues in terms of either the character development or starting to outline things. So this is gonna be a dual perspective, and I don't know about tense yet. I don't have to worry about that. in terms of like first person, third person. That will come as I know more about the story, and also with thinking about the genre that it's in and the marketing aspect of it. Like, what are the expectations? Roseanne says that she generally writes on a whiteboard. Yes, or white paper down the hallway. I have a whiteboard that keeps falling down when I put it up. But yeah, I have just like a whiteboard. It's pretty big, but I think whiteboard paper down the hallway actually sounds really cool. I'm gonna investigate that. Um, because sometimes just doing it by hand is just better for your brain. And that's why I still have all these note cards. I've got like a whole box of note cards on my desk. I've got multiple boxes, multiple mini boxes. Each book gets a little note card box. Let me see that. So note cards are still a part of the process. So Roseanne asks, when you do multi-POV, do you break this down by POV or do you a general overview with Save the Cat Beats? The first time I probably would do it together, but the spreadsheet expand. So I could add a column and then do it a column for each person's storyline, essentially. There's going to be times when they overlap and times when they might be apart and having different goals and different stories. So yeah, if you have different POVs and different timelines, that's one of the reasons why in this other version, this 7-point plot structure, the spreadsheet goes to the side. So it's impossible to see it now because I just scrolled. So there's different plots. So like column C, this D is the romance, but oftentimes if I have other characters, I would add columns here. I also have internal character arc things that I haven't talked about and I don't use as much, but I would definitely have different columns in the spreadsheet for these. If you want to try the spreadsheet, it's linked here in the description, or it should be. Let me know if it's not. But yeah, it's the story planner spreadsheet. And also, I'm also very paranoid about water damage. Like, I have cats, they like to rip things up. Like, if things were just on paper somewhere that an animal or nature inside the apartment could destroy it. Yeah, like I have multiple redundant backups of everything digital. So I feel like anything that gets done hard copy, I would back up in some way. So, okay, back to Save the Cat. So we have our before snapshot. I do want to talk about how the outlining goes kind of hand in hand or parallel with the character work. So the first tab of this was the character arcs, and I'd have the external information, which we talked about in the last video, and the internal. I do have it for both of the characters. I've only done those two. If I require it for other characters, I'll go back. Character conflicts. Oh, that's just a different version of it. I'm not going to even deal with that here. That is, oftentimes I use this tab for revision when I have written the first draft and usually written myself into a corner, or when I get to the soggy middle. I'm going to start using that now. And like with the book I'm writing right now, which is supposed to be done before November, is not going to be. I got to the end of the middle, so the second half of Act 2, and I realized, oh, I can't write the end yet. So I had to kind of go back and then go deeper into it and use like an even bigger spreadsheet to figure out every place that I went wrong. So sometimes it's like you do the work up ahead of time. At least I do. I do the planning ahead of time. And then I know that I'm going to have to go back and do even deeper planning for the revision because of all the things that I learned in the first draft. But now that we know some more about the characters and their goals and their motivations, internal, external, hopefully that helps fill out all of these items. So the setup and the catalyst. We have the debate, break into Act 2, running games, midpoint, bad guys close in, all is lost, dark night of the soul, break into Act 3, finale, and closing. So that is the overview of Save the Cat. Roseanne says that rather than find tracking conflicts within the story to be super helpful. Yes, I find tracking conflicts, that is helpful. Tracking motivations is also helpful. It depends on where you fall generally have, I don't want to say a deficit, but like every writer has their strengths and weaknesses. And character, a lot of times, character motivation, I lose track of that. But yeah, conflicts, a lot of times I do have to chart those out and also match them up to make sure that not only does one lead into another, or like one conflict resolution cycle leads into another, but also, and I totally forgot what I was going to say. So the character, the conflict arcs, and the things that are the open doors are closed. So any questions, problems that you introduce get closed, hopefully in the order that you introduced them. But yeah, it's a good tip to track the conflicts. And there could be a spreadsheet for that, or just a list. The other helpful thing is, and usually this is like a second draft thing, but to do a reverse outline. So start at the end and make sure that every action is caused by the thing that happened before it. So Iutori asks, should we know our character's motivation before we plot? I find it helpful, but the plot could also tell you the character's motivation. So if you have more knowledge, or you have like a plot that you're just dying to get out there, what you want to have happen, then you can backwards engineer the character motivation from that. Otherwise, knowing the motivation up front would help. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's really about how the stories come to you, and what you know more about. Like you might be coming to a story already knowing everything about the plot, and you kind of have an idea, or depending on the genre that you're writing, there's only certain things that are going to make sense, or there's certain things you're really excited about writing, and the character motivation is more of a mystery. So if that's the case, then like look at what they're doing and what are rational or not so rational motivations for those actions, and are you going to have your character growing or changing or not? Those go into it too. Cool. All right. Bakeries, rivals to lovers sounds very interesting. Um, so I'll just do a couple of these and just kind of have ideas for this. So we have the setup with Aster, my main character. And if it's easier to sort of look at, splitting it into columns is probably a good idea. So I will copy and paste this so I keep my colors. Color coding is always so nice. Since I'd gone through the trouble of doing it whenever I made the spreadsheet. So I'm going to have one for Duncan and one for Aster. And we will do that. Helpful, but not needed. And then also making sure that it's wrapping. Oh, maybe it is. Cool. All right. So then this lets me, although the screen is super tiny, in the setup, building up towards the premise, this sort of still kind of encompasses our hook from here. So I'm going to have in my setup is when she's going to actually get hired. So Aster gets hired for a mysterious new job that will go back to her arc and what her goal is. Oh, I don't think I put it in here. Well, her internal goal. Maybe she thinks, even if your character is not conscious of their gut level need, their internal goal, they know parts of it, I think. So at least in this case. So I'm going to go like, she thinks this new job will, meet some need of hers. Like she's going to have a goal, not just to do well at the job. But I think in a previous video, I talked about maybe she really wants to save up money to do something else. So this new job will pay really well and help her achieve her dream. Deb asks, if your story has serious potential, how big of a character arc is needed? The character will continue to change over multiple books. Absolutely. Yes, that is very true. So you kind of determine if you know at the outset how many books it's going to be, or is it going to be like ongoing series? With a long running series, they're not going to change that much. Usually the characters might change in the first one, or will be have flat arcs mostly. But if it's like a trilogy or 4 or 5 books with the same character, then kind of go back and forth with the plot and how, where you're seeing it going. You know, it's open ended. Is it like a mystery? Did you do you, because in those types of series, often you're talking about more flat arcs. So you might have a change in one book, and maybe books 2 and 3 they say the same, and then by book 4 they're ready for another change because of the things that have happened to them. So you can do sort of like a small arc, or you can continue to change them incrementally over the course of the books. So they get to one milestone, and then there's new challenges that require something different of them. And then maybe the wound that we talk about in terms of the character arcs is something that happens in book 2 for a change in book 3. Um, and a lot of times I'm trying to think of urban fantasy series that has been longer running. It's been a while since I've read urban fantasy, but I think of the characters, yeah, they're growing and changing slightly, and they have one big, oftentimes there's one big wound in their backstory. So yes, if you're dealing with a reluctant supernatural creature, then that indicates to me that, you know, if they're reluctant, they're kind of pushed into this and there's other things they might want to be doing. So as they go through the plot of book 1, by the time they get to the end, they've learned something. They're still probably going to be reluctant, but maybe they have accepted that this is kind of what they have to do. So in book 2, they're going to change a little bit more. And it really depends on where you want them to get to. Do you kind of want them to have a big series arc? And I would try to split it up. So if you want an open-ended series that can go on for however long, then maybe try to think of it in like 3-book increments. You know, is there a change that I can target in the first 3 books and then maybe in the second 3 books? That just keeps it more manageable. So in terms of setup, introduce all the important elements. So the catalyst for Aster is actually, I guess the catalyst is might actually be being hired, but I think the catalyst is going to be when she gets there. So she arrives at her new job and discovers it's very strange. Lots of strange things happening, strange people. Um, Hidden, like locked doors, creepy mansion, maybe creepy. Yeah, it's very strange. And people are hiding things from her. So I might take this and everything in the spreadsheet is sort of like bullet pointed. So the good thing about breaking it out now, if you're not using Whimsical, however you're doing this, could be just in a notebook. When I get to the catalyst, you can also just use the plus sign to create cards too. So Aster arrives at the mansion and is greeted by the butler. I want to have this sort of um, older man who's a source of wisdom and comfort to a character. Zoom in a little bit more. And I'm going to change the color because she is pink. All right, and then another thing that happens can be she's told not to go in certain wings of the house. And I probably drag that after that. So this is kind of how you build the different sections. The other thing about looking at it this way that took me a long time to understand is, you know, when you're looking at it just as cells, everything has the same weight. Everything looks like it takes the same amount of time, which is not the case. And in the book Save the Cat Writes a Novel, the author gives percentages of like, this is a 1 scene beat, this is a multi-scene beat. So that is sort of what I tried to incorporate in, oops, trying to zoom out so you can see it, but still it's like super tiny, but in the size of these elements. So you have certain things take longer and, you know, the catalyst is actually shorter. That's why it's physically smaller. And then when you get to the debate, there's more scenes here. Break into Act 2 is probably just a scene or two. And then Fun and Games is going to be a larger section. So this is also just a visual cue that I found helpful for giving you an idea of how long, how many scenes are supposed to be in each section of the story structure. And once you fill it up, then you basically have an outline, oops, that you can write to. Any questions about that? Deb asks if I've tried Plotter. I have tried Plotter. I do use Plotter for certain things. I like Plotter at certain times, but for some reason, when I'm actually plotting, I don't know. I had to use it in certain projects, and certain projects I don't. Um, yeah, this kind of reminds you. Plotter definitely has more features in terms of the timeline and preparing. You can put your character profiles in there. You can actually do like a story Bible in there and organize yourself. There is something at this stage that I just, yeah, Plotter sometimes is a little too much. I go into Plotter a lot of times after the fast draft. And because I do fast drafting, uh-oh. I hope that I'm back. Deb said that I was frozen. But because I do fast drafting, which means just writing the first draft as fast as possible, which is basically what NaNoWriMo is, and I don't edit, the second draft, which is the big revision, is kind of doing it from the ground up. It's kind of from the studs up. Okay. Hopefully it comes back for Deb, and if I'm frozen for everyone else. Hello, Written in Melanin. Welcome. Glad to have you here. But yeah, you can absolutely do this in Plotter. And I do actually recommend Plotter a lot. I'm an affiliate for them because I do like them for certain things. I just like to do things differently. Like every book I do a little bit differently. Like I do the same process, but sometimes if I did the last book in Plotter, I'll do the next book on note cards, or I get stuck in one and I go to another. Looking at things in a different way is often helpful for me. So just try to show different ways to do the same thing. And then for a dual perspective story, I haven't gotten into my hero's perspective here yet, but I would go back to the spreadsheet and figure out what his setup and his catalyst is. So his setup actually is the warriors come back after after recognizing Aster. So his family is his found family, who are the warriors. So his family returns saying they've discovered an oracle, and that is the creature that she is. I'm calling her an oracle. And maybe there is some level of debate. They debate offering her a job. At this point, the reader doesn't know why this is important, I think. I'm going to kind of keep that from the reader, but the characters know. Duncan opposes this, but he's overruled. He's outvoted. And then the catalyst is the same catalyst for both of them. Aster arrives at this job. Duncan meets her, and because it's a romance, he's going to be attracted to her, but doesn't want to, have any sort of relationship with an employee. That is my catalyst for his part of the story. I would come back in here and add that in. So add in, see if I can do the colors here. Duncan doesn't want to hire her. Probably, and you can increase the size of these if you are using Whimsical, or this cards just get smaller so you can see them. And before this, we actually have to have Duncan's friends hire. Duncan doesn't. So then he's outvoted. She comes, she's told, yeah, it lets you do the order because we can reorder the cards in the proper chronological order. So that is basically how I would go about doing this, and coming in, expanding what we've done before into the save the cat plot points, then expanding those even further into individual scenes, or even if they're not scenes that I'm sure about yet, things that will happen on the page. I think I want to show his reluctance on the page and then cut to, it could be funny if I wanted to go a little bit funny to show in his perspective. He's like, no, not going to happen, never. And then cut to she's actually walking up because she's been hired. You can skip some of this, but this is actually what happens, if that makes sense. So Written in Melon asks, what does your setup look like when you're writing? Yeah, so what happens when I'm actually get to the writing part is I do this work. I do the note cards. After the note card stage, I do a synopsis. So I take all of these and I write an actual synopsis out. And the synopsis is what I look at when I'm actually writing the draft. So I might come and glance at the spreadsheet if I get confused, but hopefully the synopsis has the most fleshed out version of this. So after all the cards are there, after it's all laid out, then it's like I'm telling the story to myself as in kind of just synopsis form. So I'd start at the beginning and say, Aster is, I think I made her like a 31-year-old woman who's a maid at this inn. She tries to be cheerful at her job, but she was being harassed by a customer. Unbeknownst to her, this group of people view her. Like I would just write it out like that. It ends up being anywhere between usually 7 to 15 pages of synopsis. So yeah, it's like all of this work is to get to that point and have that as my working draft that I'm writing off of. Any other questions about the basic process? I will zoom back out. You can obviously adapt it to whatever system works for you. If this is looking overwhelming or it's not making sense, then see if there's anything that you can take from this kind of process and bring to your own process. But whether using note cards or whiteboards or just pen and paper, just in a notebook, yeah, I think that starting out at the big picture and then just each time you iterate, you go back through and see what more detail can I have, and what does the character tell me about the plot and all that stuff. Hi, Ash. Welcome. Yeah, I think the only other thing I would say is going back to the character arcs. A lot of times when the big picture allows me to incorporate the character arcs into it. And I go back and refer to the character arc information a lot as I'm crafting the scenes that so that to make sure that those changes are happening and I'm testing them, especially the internal stuff. Like, how often can I test, this lie, the fact that she believes she's unlovable and defective? What can sort of trigger that and force her to grow? If his lie is that something's wrong with him because he doesn't want to be a warrior anymore, how do we trigger that? How do we trigger these feelings that cause the growth? JK asks, do you recommend planning out the characters or the plot first? It depends. I tend to start with plot, and I'm a plot first writer. Some writers are character first. So I don't really have a recommendation. It really is like what feels right to you and where do the stories come from? Some ideas are very character-based ideas and some ideas are very plot-based ideas. It can go either way. I do recommend going back and forth. So doing a pass at whichever one you choose. If you choose to do character first, do a pass at character, do a pass at plot. What did the plot teach you about the character? Do another pass. And Ash asks, is this close to the snowflake method? I think so. I've read a little bit about the snowflake method. I don't use the method itself, but I think I did take I kind of take a little from everything that I read and try to see what feels right. So there is a version of this where, yeah, it's kind of like whether it's big to small. I think that's incorporated in the snowflake method as well. And there might at one point have been another tab on the spreadsheet for that. The spreadsheet that I actually use is much larger than this. I sort of didn't want to completely overwhelm everyone, so I trimmed it down. But I do have lots of different methods in my and random things that I don't use all the time. I definitely like just the way I've ignored a couple of tabs on here. I ignore them until I need them again. Um, this one actually might be helpful too. This is from the Dramatica method, which is an extremely complicated method, but in its simplest form, it can be helpful if you're at a point where you actually don't know what you want to have happen in the story. So we have goal. What is the story about? The story is about basically overcoming this demon invasion. Consequences. What happens if the goal isn't reached? Then the demons win. The requirements. So this is kind of where it gets super helpful. I'm just having a problem with my trackpad. So yeah, I'm going to make this smaller. So the requirements. So in order, let's say the goal is to prevent the demons from winning. And the consequences are obviously bad if the demons win. Everyone dies. The requirements for this are to, prevent them from entering this world. If they get in, pushing them back, then what do you need to prevent them? Gathering weapons that will destroy them, building your strength to fight them, things like that. For warnings, consequences getting closer. So how do you know when things are getting closer? Oh, it's wrapping. When there is, let's say when the demons, there's some sort of magical forewarning. There's like and for the lack of a better thing, a magical alarm goes off or something like that. People start acting strange because the demon power affecting them in some way. Sacrifices that have to be endured are the costs. And for Duncan, he's got to fight when he doesn't want to fight. If I'm doing Aster, then I'm gonna put Duncan. For Aster, she has to sacrifices would be her life, like her normal life, is sacrificed when she discovers she's an oracle. The dividends are small rewards. So this is found family for Aster with these warriors that she comes to know. She has, she falls in love. That is one of the dividends. Prerequisites that have to happen in order for the requirements. So in order to prevent them, recognizing if Aster, my oracle character, her power is important to preventing the demons from winning, then it's recognizing Aster's power. Other things like, are there challenges involved in gathering the supplies for the weapons, to create weapons that can destroy demons, things like that. So this gives me ideas for side quests or progressive complications of things like they need this special sword that only metal comes from here, so they have to go on a quest to get that. And then preconditions, junior version of forewarnings, which are the consequences getting closer. So these are tiny plot impediments that hinder the goals, that let you know that this bad thing is happening. So I'm trying to think of what that might be. But there could be a warning. There could be like there's a psychic character who has a warning. Something like that. And this kind of thing allows you to drill down. So if I'm like, I know that I want to have this happen, but now I've got an idea for I had the idea that there's certain weapons that can kill demons, and maybe the supplies for them are very rare. So does Astra's power help them get these supplies? These are ideas for scenes. And so now actually I can go into my scene brainstorming section. And I don't know exactly where it goes, but I want to have a scene where I will make it. Oh, there's different shapes. I lost the shape I was using, and it switched to a different shape. So I will just, let me put one here. Maybe it's in the setup. I'll just make a square. Oh, actually, that's right. And we'll make it a different color. So they have to, go on a trip to find this sword material, this special metal, I guess, for the swords. And that's the scene that will end up being somewhere in here. I just don't know where yet. And just brainstorming, gathering things like that. So this is something that I would use in those instances. And that's kind of how I add spreadsheets to, add sheets to the spreadsheet. Any other questions about developing the outline even further? Hopefully this makes sense. And let me know if it's confusing or overwhelming in some way. I know that my brain works differently than a lot of people's, but I do like to have these multiple touch points of ways to attack the story and ways to get ideas about things. And then maybe going back to character and seeing, okay, what really are the consequences? And then going back to the world building, because there's a lot of things I don't know about the powers. Like, if there are a magical alarm that sounds when the demons are close to coming through this gate or this barrier, what are the rules of this? What are the rules about Duncan himself? Like, he feels like he's forced to be a warrior. What are the consequences for him becoming a librarian other than letting his family down? And when Melanie says that, it makes me see how outlining works in real time. It's fun for me to do it in real time, because otherwise it's nice to just come off the top of my head. It's actually how this is how it works. It just usually works for me in private. But I'm glad that it's a kickoff point to think about your own stories and to try to hopefully integrate everything together. The question about plot or character first. Some people are world first, and if you're like doing a fantasy world or a science fictional world of some kind, then you might have the world in mind. You don't know the story yet. That happens a lot too. So there's multiple ways to come at it. And that's why once you get an idea, go with it, follow it as far as you can, and then like back up and say, okay, now what are the characters? Now it's the plot. Now it's the world. At this point, I really need to stop and do more world building so that I can figure out some of the answers to the questions that just popped into my head when I went through this exercise. So, like I said, magical alarm, this special metal, these special weapons, exactly what Astra's powers are, if is there a psychic character, and what does that mean? What are the powers? Do the warriors have special powers? Are they just super strong? Like, so many questions. So much world building still needs to be done because I'm doing a fantasy world. And that's going to impact the plot a lot, and it impacts the characters and their growth to a certain degree too. Oh, and Laura, you're reading James Scott Bell. Yeah, Write Your Novel from the Middle by James Scott Bell. I talked about that before. Fantastic, super helpful. And also the midpoint. So like if I go back to my Save the Cat, he says, think about the midpoint up front. Now I had a version of a midpoint on this other tab of the spreadsheet. This is where she discovers her powers and there's a big attack. I still like that. That feels exciting for the midpoint. But what does it mean, And in Write Your Novel from the Middle, at the midpoint, the character either goes internally and looks at who they are, or they see the forces arrayed against them. And this would be a situation where she's realizing the forces arrayed against her. And is she up to the task? Are any of them up to the task of fighting them? And that's probably what I would enter that here somehow. Cool. All right, y'all. Ooh, let's see. Do you think this would work best for each chapter outline, or does it work better for the whole story? Save the Cat I think, is much better for the whole story. There are other things I do for the chapter outline, but it's a much simpler situation. Like theoretically, like all the steps of your story have to happen in each chapter, but it can be hard to have them in this level of granularity. Yeah, I think that would kind of be a little crazy making. If it works for you, that's cool, but I don't know. I don't think that would work for me. So the chapter outlines are simpler. I do have I use StoryGrid in general, which is a book by Sean Coyne, which is a little complicated, but for chapters, I plan them in 7 steps, which we can go over. And probably go over in maybe the last video before we start writing, because hopefully by that time we have like the big outline together. And then if you want to plan each scene, which I do recommend, especially when you're trying to write quickly, then I have there's another spreadsheet for that I use. But yeah, whole story for Save the Cat, and for the 7-point plot is also a whole story. Goal steps is I would use it as a whole story thing. Yeah, all these things are bigger picture things. Cool. Yeah, I will definitely go over like planning the scenes. So I think there are 3 videos left before we start writing in November. I do want to do actual scene planning. I want to do a little more on world building, and I forgot what else I was going to do. Let me know if you have put in the comments what you are interested in from here on out. Like, where are you in your story? And is there specific things that you would like to see? I do have an outline, but I don't remember what it is right now because it's late. And are you doing writing sprints? Yes, I'll be doing writing sprints. I think I'll be doing them in the same time. So I'll probably still do 7 p.m. Eastern, Mondays and Wednesdays. We might throw in a Friday if we're feeling super extra, super spicy. We want to get those words in. This is a good time for me to do this since I'm going to be working on 2 books in November. So if you are joining us live, or if you're going to be joining us in November, save this time on the calendar. I think it'll be good for some sprinting. And okay, awesome. Itari, see the scene outline. Yeah, we'll definitely do that one. I think that's all I had for now. So unless anyone else has any further questions, hopefully over the course of the next week, you'll build out your outlines. That's the homework. Come with as much of an outline as you can for the next video. Yeah, getting the big picture. And I guess some people could be writers who are like little to big. I mean, there's definitely everybody is represented in the world. So I don't know. Oh, cool. So let me know when you're doing your sprints, and I will include them in the email. Written in Melon is doing sprints too. So yeah, there's a lot of sprints happening all through November, and I will try to gather the people that I know who are doing them so we can get as much writing done as possible and support each other through the challenge and get to the finish line. If you're a little too big, I would love to know more about your little to big writing style. I think that's fascinating. It's very cool. So yeah, we will be doing something on Monday. I will let you know when I am better rested and have figured it out. But until then, hopefully work on the outlines. I'll be working on my outline and world building. I think it'll probably be a bit of a world day and how the world can solve some of these story issues, answer some of these story questions. And yeah. So those of you live, if you want to sprint, Thursdays 11 a.m. Eastern, we can sprint with Written in Melanin. And cool. Thanks a lot, y'all. I will see you next time. Happy writing, and yeah, take care.